But first, the ABC 15 investigators uncover physical and sexual abuse at a boarding school.
Yeah, a school that used to be run by Pinal County Sheriff Paul Babeu.
Life was at a bottom for me personally there. It was just miserable.
We began digging into the story 5 months ago after Sheriff Babeu announced plans to run for Congress, touting his experience as headmaster of the school. Investigator Dave Biscobing traveled to Massachusetts.
And he discovered these new allegations after talking to former students who now question Paul Babeu's judgment.
This is what's left of the DeSisto school. In Stockbridge, Massachusetts, a private boarding school for troubled teens with a long and troubled history.
It was horrifying.
From 1999 to 2001, Pinal County Sheriff and U.S. congressional candidate Paul Babeu was the school's headmaster and executive director.
There was a lot of investigations going on.
But while Babeu ran the school, the Massachusetts State Office of Child Care Services started to investigate repeated allegations of abuse. The ABC 15 investigators tracked down reports that have never been released. Reports that determined Babeu's school was unlicensed, abusive, and dangerous. Holly Nielsen remembers Paul Babeu. She was a student who lived at DeSisto for 4 years.
It's not unreasonable to say that we were cult-like.
When rules at the school were broken, students faced serious consequences. Holly remembers strict punishments. Each had a special name.
Take a verb and add an ED to the end, and that's a DeSisto term.
Like
being sheeted.
Students forced to strip down and wear nothing but a sheet in front of their peers.
That's how I spent my 16th birthday.
Sheeted.
Yeah. Life was at a bottom for me personally there. It was just miserable.
The state also reported students strip searched each other and routinely took group showers, leading to instances of sexual abuse. But the punishment students considered the worst.
Cornering.
Being cornered meant students were forced to sit, facing the wall.
You have to sit like this with your feet flat on the ground. You can't cross your legs.
From 7
in the morning till about 9:30.
That's more than 14 hours a day.
It was awful.
In one case, records show a student with bipolar disorder and ADHD was cornered for weeks on end. His medication levels weren't properly monitored, and he began to urinate and defecate on himself. He was also taken to the hospital for pneumonia. Days later, he was returned to DeSisto and sent back to the corner.
They did not feel that they wanted to adhere to any standards or rules.
Andrea Watson founded Parents for Residential Reform in Boston after her daughter was raped at a different boarding school. The group pushes to make boarding schools safer, and she helped work on the DeSisto case.
Those people were so good at covering up what they did. It's still beyond my belief.
A lot of things went down that probably shouldn't have.
Things that happened on Babeu's watch.
So he knew about the sheeting, the cornering.
He was there for that, yes. He was an administrator there, so he was certainly aware of it.
But the students here knew a secret about Paul Babeu, a secret his own sister says she didn't discover until she came to his home one afternoon.
I said, what is this student from DeSisto doing here? He says, Lucy, he's my boyfriend. I love him.
There's all the kids.
Lucy is Babeu's older sister. She says her brother was having a relationship with a male student.
I said, Paul, get control of yourself here. You know, that's inappropriate. You were his teacher. You were executive director. You can't do this.
We are not naming the former student who has not responded to our interview requests. At the time, he was 17, the age of consent in Massachusetts.
He was of age, but he would have been what we would have in a standard high school considered a senior.
Holly says she knew the student personally, and we also spoke with other students and staff who were at DeSisto who say they knew about Babeu's relationship.
It was widely known but not discussed. People were aware of it. It was sort of swept under the rug.
Obviously very serious allegations.
Yeah,
here.
very disturbing. So what is the sheriff saying about this?
Well, we reached out to Sheriff Babeu this weekend, and he declined an on-camera interview. But late tonight, his office sent us a written statement. It says, DeSisto Private School's mission was to save troubled yet talented youth in a therapeutic environment. The sheriff served 3 years and was recognized for helping restore financial stability of the school. He was never the target of any investigation or lawsuit. Sheriff Babeu is a recognized leader for victims' rights. To see all of the school's punishments, go to abc15.com/investigators.
And Dave, we know you'll keep on top of it. Thanks.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. But for Sheriff Paul Babeu responding to allegations, the ABC 15 investigators investigators first broke on our news last night.
He's accused of having a relationship with a student while he was headmaster at a Massachusetts boarding school. Not only are we hearing from the sheriff, but Dave Biskuping is hearing claims of abuse at the school from a different student, now living right here in the Valley.
This letter is Sheriff Paul Babeu's response to our investigation. His attorneys demanding a retraction to our story and sending us this. It's a statement with a signature. The attorneys claim it's signed by a former student who denies having an inappropriate sexual relationship with Babeu while he was headmaster of the DeSisto boarding school in Massachusetts. The ABC 15 investigators cannot verify the authenticity of this signed letter. It was not addressed, dated, or notarized. The student, who we are not naming, also won't respond to our requests for comment.
Everyone talked about it.
The ABC 15 investigators have spoken with several former DeSisto students, and they confirm Paul Babeu did have a relationship with a 17-year-old student at the school.
It was widely known but not discussed.
He broke every rule to be with this student.
Melissa Burrich lives in the Valley and was a student at DeSisto the entire time Babeu was headmaster. After seeing our investigation last night, she wanted to speak out and says the abuse at the boarding school got worse once Babeu arrived.
Were you ever strip searched
Yes.
by other students?
Yes.
You say you started there, and when Babeu started, it got worse?
Definitely. Everything became more strict. More people were cornered and punished. The punishments were a lot harsher.
State investigative records describe cornering as students being forced to sit facing a corner 14 hours a day for weeks or sometimes months. State records don't name Babeu, and he was never accused of participating in the abuse, but students say he was aware of what was going on.
Did he know about these things?
Definitely. He had to have known. He was always a part of those meetings.
I'm investigator Dave Biskuping, ABC 15 News.
Now, just within the last hour, we received another comment from the sheriff's attorney. It says Sheriff Babeu never had a sexual relationship with a student. A student has never lived with Sheriff Babeu either. Of course, we'll stay on top of this and bring you any new developments.
Our ABC 15 investigators bringing more tough questions to the Pinal County Sheriff tonight. Paul Babeu speaking publicly for the first time since we revealed his ties to a controversial boarding school and allegations he had a relationship with a student. Dave Biskuping broke this story, and he confronted Babeu at a county board meeting. In our top story tonight, we're showing you the sheriff's response.
That is absolutely false, blatantly false, and by the reckless disregard of the truth by one news station.
Sheriff Paul Babeu responding to allegations we first reported that he had a relationship with a student while serving as headmaster at the DeSisto school in Massachusetts.
That's our station. You didn't answer the question.
That's a
From 1999 to 2001, Babeu says he was the head of the unlicensed boarding school, and the state of Massachusetts found repeated cases of physical and sexual abuse.
You did not respond to the questions about the abuse at the school that the state investigation found. You have not responded to that
you don't
either.
You don't even know what you're talking about.
Would you like me to pull out the state investigation? It's right here, Sheriff.
In what I said, that all of these allegations, and you have already had a written statement by me and by my attorneys, and that's all I'll say to Channel 15.
In statements, Babeu said he had a limited role as headmaster, but he touts his leadership experience at the school on his campaign website. On his application for a job with the Chandler Police Department, Babeu wrote he was in charge of legal issues, and laid out in legal documents filed while Babeu was headmaster is case after case of abuse discovered at the school. Students say Babeu knew what was happening.
He was certainly aware of it.
There are faculty meetings every morning. He was always a part of those meetings.
Those same students also confirmed that he did have a relationship with a 17-year-old male student.
Everyone talked about it. He broke every rule to be with this student.
So I'm going to go back into the...
Sheriff, you still haven't answered the question. A state investigation found the abuse at the school while you were there.
Board of Supervisors, thank you very much.
Sheriff, you still have not answered this question.
I'm investigator Dave Biskuping, ABC 15 News.
I was horrified. What I found was that children were being abused. It was a school pretending to be a school and actually an asylum.
Dr. Mark Wellick has been a psychiatrist for 40 years, and he's reacting to what our investigation uncovered.
Have you ever seen anything like we've showed you?
No.
From 1999 to 2001, Sheriff Paul Babeu was headmaster at DeSisto School in Massachusetts, a boarding school for troubled teens. During that time, state investigators documented widespread cases of physical and sexual abuse.
It was very violent.
Melissa Burrich lives in the valley now, but spent almost 4 years at DeSisto. She still remembers the punishments.
The cornering, the sheeting, everything like that.
Court records show students were forced to sit and face a corner for 14 hours a day, weeks, and sometimes months on end. Students were also stripped down and forced to wear nothing but a sheet.
I mean, that's cruel.
Dr. Wellick says there are long-term physical and mental health consequences to the discipline used at DeSisto.
Likely a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression. And depressions that occur earlier, occur more frequently, are harder to treat. That tends to shorten people's lives.
The ABC 15 investigators have spoken with former DeSisto students from across the country. Some tell us the school made them who they are today.
They would have to say it was good so that they'll feel okay.
But Melissa says her time at DeSisto still haunts her.
Everything just sort of stopped, and I didn't know how to live and function as a normal human being.
It may or may not be there in their immediate memories, but the effects of it will always be there.
We have more of Dr. Wellick's interview online, where you can also find all of our coverage on this story, plus the state documents that detail the abuse. Just go to our website, abc15.com/investigators. I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15 News.
This is ABC 15 News.
A bombshell announcement from the Pinal County Sheriff Paul Babeu. He's quitting the race for Congress and jumping into the race to keep his job as county sheriff.
This has been a whirlwind, and never did I expect this measure of not just confrontation, but the personal attacks.
The ABC 15 investigators first uncovered his ties to a controversial boarding school with a history of abuse. Tonight, the fallout and what happens next with Paul Babeu. And thanks for choosing us. I'm Stephanie Honkard. Sheriff Babeu made his big announcement early this morning in an email to supporters. ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing has been leading our coverage of the sheriff for 3 months now. And Dave, the sheriff now says he wants to keep his current job.
Well, Stephanie, with all the controversy surrounding this sheriff, for weeks the question hasn't been if he was going to drop out of this race, it was when. Now the focus turns to Babeu's race for re-election, and political experts tell me it will be a very tough race for him to win.
People in Pinal County were saying, Sheriff, you're not going to be as significant going from sheriff to being one of 435 members, and your voice would be diminished.
That's one of the reasons Sheriff Paul Babeu says he's dropping out of his congressional race. But political experts Mike O'Neill and Sean Noble say that's not the real reason.
He broke the public trust by putting himself in a position to be exploited.
I think his fate was sealed when we started to see a flurry of all these stories and accusations.
Today is the day my chief has to make a decision.
Babeu's chief deputy, Steve Henry, was planning to run for sheriff. But the ABC 15 investigators learned Henry was given an ultimatum by federal agents investigating him and Babeu for illegal campaign activity. Henry was told to quit his job as chief deputy or drop out of the race. That's also why Babeu says he needed to step in.
There's like 7 or 8 or 9 candidates running for sheriff in my county, none of which that I feel comfortable with that'll carry on the forward progress.
And after all of the pictures, scandals, and investigations,
Sheriff, you still have not answered this question.
O'Neill and Noble say Babeu will have a tough fight.
I think even that's an uphill struggle.
I think he'll just fade away.
I personally think his career's over.
Given what he's put the Pinal County citizens through, I don't know why they would entrust him again.
Every local police department.
We just checked with the county elections office, and they told me Babeu's campaign has not turned in any of the necessary paperwork to get on the ballot. And Stephanie, he has until the end of the month to get everything in.
And you'll let us know as soon as he does.
Absolutely.
Dave, thank you.